Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another great edition of my Grue Rume Show. And for the Grue Rume Show today, we got a very awesome guest, and his name is Adam Vass. And I'm really looking forward to talking to him. He is the co-creator and designer of a horror slasher desktop game, a board game. It's called 1978. The night they came home. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Since I am a big horror fan, I would love to know how this game came about and what inspired him to make a horror slasher game. I am Rocco Cross. I am the host at Stutters. I am the host of the Grue Room. And my interview with Adam will be coming up very soon. This is my Grue Room. And as always, welcome to my nightmare. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome to Grue, and thank you so much for taking time out of your night and coming on the show, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge horror person. I love horror films, horror video games, horror toys. Like you name it, if it's horror, I'll buy it. So, I before we talk about the game, I want to ask you, like, when did your passion for horror start? Horror slashers.
Yeah, I remember watching a lot of the sort of classic slashers when I was in high school. Specifically, Friday the 13th was my franchise of choice. Um, I remember that was also like when I was, 13 or maybe even 12, seeing The Exorcist for the first time and seeing the original Amityville Horror. And
Yes.
both of those movies genuinely scared me so much that I would like have nightmares and couldn't sleep. And so when I found slashers, it was interesting because I was still having this scary experience, but there was like
Mhm.
an aspect of fun and almost like tongue-in-cheekness to it. Especially when you obviously get into the sequels and they get crazy. Um, so yeah, I would say about 13 when I was sort of introduced to being scared for fun, and then kind of grew up with that and kind of existed in the weird, early aughts of uh, Jason X and Freddy versus Jason and like all the really weird Gonzo kind of sequels. Um, so that was sort of my wheelhouse for a long time. And then as I got into like my 30s, and I was introduced to Shudder, then I
Mhm.
was watching a lot more like indie horror and kind of, with Hereditary and like some of the
Yeah.
more artistic kind of modern horror. I fell really deeply back in love with the genre.
Nice, nice. And and like, did you, did you ever dress up as slashers for Halloween and stuff? Like when
Uh,
Halloween time comes around, you ever do like Freddy or Jason or Michael or anyone like that?
that's a good question. I don't think I did. Um, so actually as part of the campaign for this game, I got to make a mask of my own, and like we shot a little trailer for like a made up movie for this game. And um
Nice.
now that you mention it, I think that might have been the first sort of slashery costume that I did. I was the girl from The Ring for Halloween last year. Uh
Yes, yes.
and I'm racking my brain because I know I must have done other scary costumes, but nothing's coming to mind. I think I was much prefer making my own like weird killers and masks and creepy stuff.
Okay. And like I'm a big fan of like Halloween time. Like I love going to the scary houses and the haunted
Totally.
the hay rides. Are you a fan of that?
Yeah, I that's actually where I still get pretty scared. The
Okay.
sort of like suspense of just knowing that something's going to happen is what really gets me like anxious. Um, to the point where like the reveal or the person jumping out at you is almost a relief because the tension breaks. But yeah, I love that. I got to do like a really cool immersive theater piece last Halloween where
Nice.
it was like a sort of like cult initiation mixed with kind of LARPing. Like we were invited to be part of this cult and we were split up, and there was actors doing all kinds of like interesting stuff. But like I went with my partner and she was in a different room, so we afterwards we were convening and talking about like how different our experiences were, and how
Oh wow.
the it was like being inside of the movie or the story.
Oh my
And
God.
that was really fascinating, and that was sort of inspiring too, in terms of like how to tell a story in this abstract way. Like um a haunted house or a haunted hayride is very like, you're on the track, right? You're going in the
Exactly.
path. And this was such an interesting, like free form, fluid kind of scare experience. And so this year I'm going to be looking for that to return and see if there's any other kind of like weird horror event or like interactive things that I can get into.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I still haven't been there yet, but I've heard Halloween Horror Nights is like one of the best things you can go to around the Halloween season, and
Yeah,
I still have to experience that yet. I'll
same.
probably do it soon.
Yeah. I always see them announce like which movies are getting treatments and
Yeah,
who,
yeah.
and seeing like, I think it was last year that had like the big Nope um corral that looked really fun to go to. And I was really jealous whenever I'd see videos of that online. So
Mhm.
I'm like you, I want to go someday, but I've never had the chance.
I know, right? Like I wanted to go last year because they had a whole room dedicated to the killer clowns from outer space, and
Yeah.
that's like one of my favorite horror movies ever. And I wanted to go so bad, and but time ran out, and I never had a chance to go. So I'm hoping they bring it back again.
Yeah. I bet they will. I feel like Killer Clowns is kind of having a resurgence, like a moment now.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a fun film. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really scary. I mean, they shoot you with cotton candy guns, but
Right.
are you a fan at all of buying like horror figurines and stuff? And
Yeah, I again, I have like some assorted stuff around my office. I actually have Sam from Trick or Treat like in the corner of my office,
yes,
the
yeah.
one that's like holding a bowl, so I could put like my art supplies in that, and
Oh, I love it.
grab a paint marker from Sam. I actually, within reach, I have one of his like lollipops
Oh
at my
my
desk.
God, that's so awesome.
That's also just like sitting with my paintbrushes and my pens and stuff. Um, so yeah, I have scattered things. I have a lot of cast toys from H&H Toy Company. So if you've ever heard of the artist Sam Heimer, who does a lot of
Mm.
Halloween and horror adjacent stuff, they
Oh,
basically take his drawings and turn them into like resin cast figurines. I'll grab one real quick and show you.
yeah.
Um, so they're these little like
Oh
castings,
wow, that's really cool.
and they're like creepy little guys. I have quite a collection of his, of just like, they go up for sale, they sell out pretty fast, but they're all unique drawings that Sam made. And
Nice.
yeah, I have just above me like a whole shelf of little guys, little creepers that are watching me work.
Do you have any horror video games you like playing? Like, I don't know if you're a big gamer or not.
So it's funny because horror video games specifically scare me in a way that I like can't play them very much.
Okay. Okay.
There's something about um when I'm watching a horror movie, it's like a passive experience and I'm watching what the characters are doing. But when I
Hmm.
play a horror video game, that's me. Like I'm making those choices.
Well, yeah.
And there's something really deeply like psychologically scary about that, that like I know if I go this way, I'm going to get scared.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't finished it, but I've been really enjoying a horror game called Mundon. That's like a folk horror game that I got on Steam. All the
Hmm.
textures are drawn with pencil. Like it looks really unique, and it looks almost like
Wow.
these old kind of folk horror illustrations come to life.
Really?
And really recommend that. It's awesome. It's creepy. It's kind of puzzly. Like you're walking around and looking for tools and trying to figure out what happens to, I think it was your grandfather that passed away. And then
Okay.
at nighttime, there's sort of these like hay people. It very much has that sort of Wicker Man uh fire and uh
Yeah.
weird like crop rituals. It's very cool. It's very unique. I've never played a video game like that before.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll email you the link because that one I think is really worth checking out,
Oh,
especially
okay.
we have, Dead by Daylight and like the
Oh
bigger
yeah, of course.
competitive horror games.
Yeah.
I'm interested that I saw that Texas Chainsaw video game is coming out
I'm
later
looking
this year,
forward to that.
but this is a very unique, like it's quieter, it's lonely kind of feeling, like you're the only,
Okay.
it's not online, so you're the only person playing, and
Yeah.
that brings about its own kind of scares.
Oh yeah. Wow. And speaking of games, like you have your own game that you made, and can you tell us about what inspired you to make it?
Yeah. So I've been making tabletop games for about 7 years now. And I've kind of dipped my toe in horror stuff along the way. Um, Generally with things that feel uh sort of like a movie, but with the serial numbers filed off. Similar to how 1978 is very clearly inspired by Halloween, but it's got its own stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so I've made games inspired by The Evil Dead, and I have like conspiracy horror kind of stuff. I really love found footage as a genre, so I'm working on a found footage game that'll come out later this year. But
Oh wow.
1978 is my dilution of just like the slasher genre, this relationship between the final girl and the killer, and this
Hmm.
sort of duality of them, and how they often are one another's foils, right? They feel like they're not evenly matched, but as we've seen in every slasher movie, they are a match for one another. And the way that that works, and the way that that interacts with a board game and with like role playing, was really interesting to me, especially because two-player role playing experiences are less common than like group and party kind of games, like more like
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, where you'd expect
Yeah.
6 players. So this feels intimate. This feels up close in the way that the fear feels in a slasher movie.
Nice. Nice. So can you play both the final girl and the slasher?
Yeah, so the game, its regular mode is a 2 player. So one person is the slasher, and the other is the final girl, and you're playing against one another. But each of them also has a solo mode, so you can play as just the slasher and like tell the story, or just the
Oh,
survivor and tell that story. Um, and because the game works with you interpreting card prompts, and there's also like just the randomness of a shuffled deck of cards, every time you play, it's going to be a unique experience, and you're going to have different events and different characters, and everything will be whatever you want it to be, which is really cool.
oh wow. So like how do you think is something like this? Like you are the co-creator of the game, the designer of the game. Like how do you think of like different paths to take and what to do next? Like how does that come to you?
Um, that comes, I would say it comes from just a lot of studying and a lot of playing. Um, my other life, my other career is that I'm a touring musician.
Oh
And
wow.
when COVID hit, I obviously couldn't go on tour.
Well
So
yeah.
I went full time with game design, and I really dove in, and I was just, reading and writing and doing games every day. Um, I also do a lot of the visual art for my own games, not for 1978, but for most of my other projects. So it became a thing where I could design it, I could write it, I could illustrate it, and I could publish it all on my own. So I was efficient in that I could control everything within my own mind, but it was also like a lot of work for one person to do, and it was um, a lot to engage with. But
Yeah.
because of that, I was just so consumed with like, how do games work? How do storytelling games work? How do you interact with another player in a way that's meaningful? And trying to bridge the gap, especially in this game where it's competitive, where you have the slasher and the survivor going against one another. But
Yeah.
as players, our goal is still to have fun and tell a compelling story. So finding ways to motivate players to do certain things or reward them for taking risks and maybe even choosing to do things that are less advantageous. Like in this game, if the survivor is putting themselves in danger, in that's something that I, as a designer, can try to reward and encourage because it's going to make the gameplay and the story more tense and more interesting. So it's a lot of weird things that you wouldn't think go into a game, like it's player psychology, it's the probability math of like how likely am I to draw a certain card or to roll a certain dice. Like there's so much stuff that goes into it, but by just immersing myself in that culture and also having like a pretty analytical mind from just who I am, they work really well in the ability to dilute something that I like into something that someone else can experience, albeit sometimes at the cost of my ability to sleep.
And like every good horror slasher film, like the slasher always has it like a somewhat special connection to the final girl or the final guy. In this board game, I mean, well, the tabletop game, is there like a special connection between the final girl and the slasher?
Yeah, so during an interesting aspect of this, and one of my favorite parts of it, is as I mentioned, the cards are going to be random and different every time that you play. But as you're getting ready, as you're setting up the game, you're actually creating your own killer and your own survivor.
Gotcha.
It's not pre-made. It's not like you have to be Michael Myers, So depending on the cards that you draw, you get to create your own mythology and then follow that. So it's exciting, it's creative, and it's this experience that, like, when I get to play the game, no one has ever made the killer that I made before, because
Oh, really?
I'm using these random cards and these random prompts to make them. So while you're setting it up, you are making those connections together. Like, why are you returning to the house? Like, what's special about this house? What is special about Halloween itself? Like, why today of all days? And depending on how you answer that, the killer and survivor can have a very intimate connection, or it could just be bad luck, or it could be anything in between those, like the story gets to be up to the players to make it their own. And people who are more horror minded and more familiar with like the tropes of a slasher movie tend to lean into that and make a more fun, like 80s style slasher.
Oh, definitely.
And people who don't necessarily have as much reverence for the genre can still play this game and make a really interesting and compelling, like, unique story that's just their own thing.
Nice. And the game is based on Halloween night, right? Like the both the final girl and the slasher are doing this on Halloween night.
Right. Again, like, you could change that if you want. It's not extremely burdensome, but the one of the aspects of the game and like the design of the setting is similar to that in Trick or Treat, where the town itself really celebrates and really loves Halloween.
Yeah.
And so having that cooked into the culture of the place that you are, to a lesser extent, John Carpenter's Halloween does this as well, with like kids trick-or-treating and the jack-o'-lanterns are out, are very like set dressing. But the idea that the people that you're interacting with and meeting throughout the story are innately engaged because it's Halloween, and like maybe they want to be scared too, or maybe there's something about the experience of Halloween and like the sort of folk legend that is a slasher. Like, everyone's heard a rumor about this guy, or everyone has heard these stories, and you get to plant those in your story and like play with them as tropes if you want. Like, you can either subvert them and have it be something more scary than you could imagine, or lean into it and have it be like, yes, this is the boogeyman, like this, we've heard stories of this guy, we know how he's going to act.
Yep.
And
And
there's really fun stories with both of those in play. Like you can be as cheesy or as serious or as scary as you want it to be because you're in control. You're effectively the director of your own horror movie when you play this
that's
game.
really awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. And there's always been a bunch of horror games out, video games and board games. And what do you think is special about this one? Like, what makes it stand out from the other ones?
Yeah. Um, a thing that I particularly like when I play a game is that narrative driven gameplay. I want to be immersed in it and I want to care about the story that we tell and like make cool sentences, use really rich adjectives and just really like paint the picture in my mind.
Yeah,
This game really rewards you for doing that, and the play is competitive. There's resources and you're like trading and drafting cards and stuff, but the heart of the game is let's take an hour and make our own scary story. And the cards and stuff are just the ability that I, as a designer, kind of like craft for players to be able to use to tell those stories. Um, so it's not necessarily about winning and losing. It's not a board game that's more traditional where you're, like collecting pieces and moving around a board. This is more so like a method by which you can make your own horror stories. And every time you play it, it's going to be a unique story. So that's personally what I really love about role-playing games and the sort of games that I make is that at the end of the day, like we're making a movie in our brains that we can share as players, but it's going to be a completely unique experience to us.
nice, nice. And who would you do you rather play in the game? Like, do you like being the final girl, the victim, or do you like being the slasher?
So I've actually only played as the slasher so far,
Oh, nice.
which I
Okay.
do like, but there's an interesting sort of social aspect to being the survivor that I'm interested in playing with. And I think in the next few days, I'll probably try the solo version as the survivor
Okay.
and get to experience that a little bit more because the slasher obviously um, is less human in a way.
Well,
They're
yeah.
almost supernatural.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so all the other characters that you meet over the course of the story are generally brought in by the survivor because they're a person who exists in this town. Um, so I'm interested in that and playing with these other pieces a little bit more. And the way that works in the game too is really fun because by introducing a character during the daytime, you're almost guaranteeing that character is going to get killed in the nighttime.
Yeah, true. And how could fans like buy the game or give money towards the game to help the game come out?
It's on Kickstarter right now until Monday the 19th. So the URL for that is just 1978.games. When the Kickstarter ends, we're going to just take a couple days to decompress and exhale. And we'll also just have a pre-order system at the same URL a couple days later. So the game will be available to pre-order all summer. And we're planning on having this in hand and being shipped to backers before Halloween so that you can play it on Halloween if you so choose.
Oh, yo, that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that would be great to play a Halloween game on Halloween.
Right. Yeah. I don't want it like that was why we're doing a Kickstarter in June, which sort of
Yeah.
feels strange to be, trying to pitch horror games now, but it's because we're planning for Halloween and we want to have it made by then. We don't want to just be working on it still.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. And this is like a total non-related horror question. Is there what kind of music do you like listening to? Like what's on your playlist?
Yeah. I listen to a lot of like stoner metal and like riffs, a lot of riffs. Um, Especially when I've been making this game, I listen to a lot of like Chelsea Wolfe and Emma Ruth Rundle and this sort of like creepy spiritual almost sort of metal stuff. Um,
Okay.
and I also like I got to compose um a song for the trailer for 1978 that was like very John Carpenter worship, like busting out some synthesizers and trying some new stuff, which is
Nice.
not a kind of music that I know how to make. So it was a really fun experiment. And I think it turned out really cool. But I really enjoy, there's a lot of like YouTube playlists of like John Carpenter-esque horror music, and those will really put me in the zone when I'm writing and I'm just like typing and bobbing my head like that and like
Okay.
getting really into that. So
Nice. And if you had to choose a karaoke song, what would be your go-to song?
um that's a good question. It used to be Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi for a very
Yeah,
long
that's
time.
definitely a
um
classic.
I am kind of trying to find what my next era of karaoke character is, and I've been thinking about doing maybe some Alice Cooper or some
All
kind of
right.
like more kind of um throwbacky rock and roll kind of stuff.
Alice, he just keeps got him and the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
The Alice tours every year. He makes new, like he has a new album coming out soon. And the Rolling Stones, they're keep touring. Alice keeps like those two bands will live on like
Right.
long.
Yeah, he's must have been touring for like 50 years now, which is
Yeah.
really, I've been touring for 14 years and my back hurts. So like I imagine he's in a hard
But,
spot.
but like I think Alice Cooper, like I mean his he don't sell out the stadiums like the Rolling Stones do,
Right.
but I think Alice Cooper's his stage show is like so much better than the Rolling Stones
It's a
because like
blast.
yeah, like if you're a fan of horror movies and you go see Alice Cooper live, like why going his stage show is like a live action horror film.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to see him a few years, maybe 5 years ago with my dad,
Yeah.
and just had such a good time. uh it's also kind of like stage magic. Like it's
Yeah, exactly.
really fun. It's really interactive in an interesting way. Besides just seeing a rock band, like you're seeing a lot
Exactly.
more.
You're not only listening to good rock songs, heavy metal, like you're seeing a show, like his head's getting decapitated
That's the moment I
and
always think
blood
of too.
squirting all over the stage, and like you actually are part of a live horror show plus really good songs.
Yeah.
And I don't I don't want to keep you anymore, so I'm just gonna ask this is like where can fans follow you at?
I'm on Twitter at WC Gameco. All of my games are at worldchamp.io, including, I mentioned there's a Evil Dead inspired game called Hell Cabin that's up there. There's a sort of conspiracy horror. If you've ever heard the podcast Limetown, a game that's inspired by that called Cobwebs that I think horror fans will really like. And I am coming out actually next in just a few days with my folk horror summer game called Ritual. That's very Midsummer and Wicker Man inspired. Um,
Okay.
I get to do all these small, like handheld kind of games in between my bigger tentpole games like 1978 that takes a little bit longer to design and to produce. So I'm coming up with new stuff all the time. And this year I really decided to double down and go with a lot of horror stuff. So I would definitely check out worldchamp.io for all of those games.
Sweet, definitely will. Well, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on the show. Like it was
Yeah,
really
thanks for
fun
chatting with
chatting,
me.
and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the game too. Like it's gonna be awesome.
I'm gonna email you after this and give you some game recommendations too.
Oh, okay, sweet. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
All right, buddy. We'll have a good Friday night and rest of the weekend.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.